Time to start another big series. So over in Killer Flicks, I do something called the Theme of the Week that I run for the group. It's a group that I've been in for a few months now, and honestly, for the size of the group, I can't believe that I haven't encountered one dickhead yet. I usually get along with everyone, and if me and someone aren't really agreeing or we're disagreeing on a bunch of things, I either just kind of bow out and I'm like, all right, whatever. But I haven't really ran into anyone who's trying to, prove themselves right and get into arguments with me and name calling and any of that shit. I haven't seen any of it in there. And as I said, in a group that size, that's pretty effing amazing. So I don't know why I just said effing. Have you ever watched this channel? I say fuck every 5 seconds. But whatever. Anyway, so this was something I wanted to do for a while. The upcoming theme of this week that's going to win tomorrow, because it's ahead by tons of votes at the moment, is anthologies. I'm a huge anthology fan. It's like more bang for your buck, man. Instead of one story, you get like 3, 5. Some have like up to 7. I've seen a lot of anthologies. And as you can see in my collection right here in this area, there's something missing, a bunch of films. And those are the Amicus anthology films, starting with Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. Now, there are a lot of people who will argue that there are only 7 anthology films from Amicus, but I disagree. I say there are 11. Next, we have Torture Garden, The House That Dripped Blood, Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror, Asylum. I don't know why I'm saying these all so weird. The Tales That Witness Madness. This is one of the ones that people don't agree that is part of it. Another one right here. And Now the Screaming Starts. That's another one people say isn't part of it. I disagree. Here's another one. The Uncanny. But these were all produced by the same company and the same guy, so I disagree. From Beyond the Grave, which is like the last one in the ones that people say that it is. And then the final one from 1981, The Monster Club. These are all really fun. So I'm really looking forward to getting to all of them. But let's stick with the first one here, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. So let me put all this shit down, shall we? I should probably just edit that out. I probably will. Maybe. All right, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. Now, this has Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Donald Sutherland. Donard? On Dasher, on Donard? Anyway, so the way I'm going to do anthologies is I'm going to talk about the wraparound first, and then I will talk about the segments in order of how they happened in the film. So let's start with the wraparound. Now, Christopher Lee's character is the skeptic. He's kind of a dick. He's an art critic. And outside of just straight up being a dick, I think he would be the me of the film. I'd be sitting there like, don't listen to this guy. Peter Cushing comes in. He's this tarot card reader. And Christopher Lee's sitting there like, this is a con job. Like, he calls him a confidence man. You can tell how old this movie is, 1965. You don't really hear that term anymore, but yeah, I think he is definitely the me of the film, but he's kind of a dick, so I don't want to say that he fully is. I guess him and the musician, like a blend of the two, because he's a goofball, and he really, he really makes jokes at all the times he probably shouldn't. And then Christopher Lee is the skeptic of skeptics. I love that I love the setting of this film. I think it's just a great place to set an anthology film, because you have, time to kill, so that gives them an excuse to hear stories being passed around inside the train car. There's nothing else to do. It's claustrophobic. There's nowhere to run. You're on a moving train. You can't just jump off and get out. So you're sitting there and you're with all these strangers that you don't know. So I just think it's like the perfect setting. Now, is it the only anthology film that I've seen set on a train? Absolutely not. There's a movie where God and the devil are fighting over souls while telling stories. I'll do that one day. But Peter Cushing, is great as always. His big, thick eyebrows and his menacing presence. I just love it. Now, why the guys on this train would buy it, I feel like every one of them would be the Christopher Lee skeptic character. Like, because the first story that he tells is about a werewolf. Because here's something that's different about this one than the majority of anthologies. I've literally seen probably like 200 of these. And it's not the only one by any means, but it's on the rarer side of the anthologies, where the stories are specifically about the people they're telling them to. Usually it's just stories about random people that these people have no connections to. They take place in different time periods and so on and so forth. But this one is specifically about like the person he's talking to. He reads their tarot cards and he tells them their fate. And every single one of them, I always have to say this because somebody gives me shit almost every time I have a video, but spoilers, obviously. But yeah, as it goes on, every one of them on their 5th card, which is kind of like their fate card, I suppose, they all draw death, which is cool. And at the end of the movie, when the wraparound finishes up, what I really like is that Peter Cushing's character, he's like, haven't you figured out who I am yet? And you're sitting there like, this dude's death, clearly. But obviously they're not getting that. Who would believe that? Although they believed that they would encounter a werewolf, a killer plant, a vampire, a fucking, severed hand that would be coming after them, and a voodoo curse. So I guess these guys are open to a whole bunch. But he disappears at the end out of the car. For some reason, they don't completely freak out. The lights go out for like a second, and then he's just vanished. And they don't seem to be like, what the fuck? Where'd he go? Like, holy, like, everyone in that car would have lost their minds. But they were just kind of like, well, that was crazy. Huh, okay, whatever, back to our life. It was so ridiculous. But this film isn't about being completely serious anyway. But I love that he leaves the tarot deck, and the tarot deck's like fanned out upside down, and then you have the one death card that's just laying out by itself, like saying like, there's so many things that it's saying there, that he is death, that they're gonna die, I love it. It's such a great shot. It's just menacing, and I adore that final shot of the tarot cards. And then they get at the station at the very, very end, and it's all foggy and dank, and I love the setting. I don't know if that's like the pathway to the afterlife or what, and then they turn around and Peter Cushing's standing there, and they look into his hood, and he's just a skeleton face. God, I love these old movies like this. I'm not a huge fan of movies before the 60s, but like the 60s and the 70s, especially like the 60s, there's such a great feeling in them. It's back when people were still very educated and sophisticated, and the stories were very well written, even though there's a lot of like throwing away of logic. I just feel like the characters are written with such intelligence and class. And you don't see a ton of that, especially in American cinema. You get it more in the European cinema, which is what this is, so it makes sense. But I don't know, I just don't feel like I see it all that much anymore. So let's get into the segments. Now, we're going to do them in order, as I said. So the first segment, we have this guy going to check out this house, and this movie, you can tell almost instantly what time period this was shot in because of the blood. The blood in this movie is so fake. It is that paint, that like pinky paint that they threw all over the ground. Now, I do think that wasn't just because they couldn't actually get something to look like blood. I think that was it was almost like an artistic license to not be overly graphic. Like that, so people wouldn't be disgusted. Like, because it's so fake, the audiences back then that were very, very sensitive could handle extremely fake looking blood. Like when you see paint on the ground, your brain can be like, okay, that's supposed to be blood, but it doesn't look anything like blood, so I don't feel like this is a gory film that I need to walk out of. So I do feel like those are choices by the filmmakers and the producers and everything. Like, no. We didn't get a ton of realistic looking blood until the 70s and especially into the 80s. But even in those eras, of course, there's plenty of movies that the blood looks like shit. But when you watch movies in like the 60s and whatnot, or you can just do it in black and white, and then you can use Hershey's syrup, which is black, and it can look like blood because you don't have any color to show it off. I'm sure you know what movie I'm talking about. But anyway, so this one is about a werewolf, as I mentioned already, and this kind of happens throughout this movie. As I said it about the first segment, or the wraparound story, how they just all kind of accept their stories, and then they accept that he's missing, and this guy accepts, like, once he finds, and I get it, it's an anthology movie. They don't have a lot of time to flesh things out and make characters filled with doubt. So they have to, speed it along, get that moving. Like, all right, we need characters to accept this instantly. Yes, is it going to make it seem like they're being gullible or whatever? Yes, but we just don't have time. We have like 15 minutes to tell this story. We can't have a skeptic for 30 fucking minutes. That just won't work. So, but he accepts the werewolf thing so fast. Like, he doesn't even have any inkling that a werewolf exists, or he's not there to look for one, nothing. He's just there to like look at the house. And he goes down and he finds this wall. He breaks through the wall. He finds this tomb in there, which immediately you would call like excavators and do this right and try to, get some archaeologists in there to properly, excavate it. So that doesn't matter. But he goes in there, he takes it and he's trying to open it up. They leave the room, he closes the door, he comes back. He so clearly closes the door too, so that they can show that the door is open later. It's funny, he like turns around and closes the door for no reason, except for to do that, to set that up. But he comes back, door's open, he walks down, and he looks in the tomb, and there's this fucking like crazy looking corpse. It's like everything's, it kind of looks like a mummy. It's cool. And then he hears like this howling. He walks upstairs and we see a dog. And at first, I haven't seen this in a while, I was like, what? Oh no, like they made a dog a werewolf, and he melts down. This is cool too. In most werewolf movies, they say that you have to shoot them with a silver bullet. And in this movie, they do a little bit different of a spin, which is probably more close to the original. I don't know, I'd have to look into it, but you have to melt down a silver cross and then make the bullets out of the cross. So it can't just be any silver, it has to be a silver cross that you melted down and made bullets out of. How he was able to do that, they don't really show that. Like, he just picks up a fucking cross and he's like, all right, we'll melt this down. It's like, do you have a bullet maker there? Do you have like the equipment to make bullets? Did you bring that stuff? Like, you didn't even know you were going to have to do this, and all of a sudden you're an expert on it? As I said, you just kind of have to accept everything that's going on. But he does, and he makes them. And then we see the dog, and you're like, oh, it's a fucking dog. How lame. But then he shoots the 6 bullets at the dog. The dog runs off, and then we get the fake out that the girl is actually the werewolf, and that the only way that the werewolf can be taken and killed is by the, ancestor of the person who killed the werewolf once upon a time, which is cool. It's a cool twist, but she's holding all the bullets in her hand, and that scene doesn't really make any sense because he shot at the dog. He says he hit the dog 6 times. The dog ran off, and then she's holding all the bullets. I don't understand that part. That makes no sense to me. Did he shoot the dog? If he didn't they just hit the wall? Did she just go and dig all 6 out in like 2 seconds? Did they hit her and she pulled them out of herself? But she said that he shot at the dog. He didn't shoot at her. So I don't get that scene in the slightest. So whatever. But I like that they were playing with the mythologies, and as I said, they're probably sticking closer to what the werewolf mythology actually is, and we've just changed it over the years. And moving on to the next one. Now, this is the Living Plants. Now, this isn't The Happening by M. Night Shyamalan. Everyone calm down, even though I thought that movie was fine. Yeah, crucify me all you want. I didn't think it was as stupid as everyone thought it was. But first we get the little poor Rusty, man. That little dog goes up and gets his ass strangled by the plants, the killer plants. That was a bummer. The good thing the guy had access to these plant experts that were just willing to help him out. That was convenient as fuck. And then one of the plant experts who, they don't even, as I said, they just accept that it's killer plants, like pretty much quick. And then the guy overreacts so fast. He's like, if this is true, then the plants would take over the world. And you're like, huh? Plus, going back to the segment 1, the werewolf is coming at the guy that's in the train. And we're to believe that he is killed by the werewolf. I mean, why else would the werewolf be coming at him? Did he just run off? We don't know, but it is implied that she kills him. But then at the end of the movie, they say that all 5 of the people in there died in a train crash. So I'm not understanding. Then a few of these throughout, they die. So how are they dead on a train? That is another thing that is kind of like, okay, I thought they died in their stories. Was their fate to die in the future from something they hadn't done yet? And he's just gonna kill them before these events took place? Do they have no memory of these events already have taken place? And they all did live and got on the train, and on that train they were on it all makes no sense. Like, that makes no sense. I'm completely confused on a lot of this, but let's stick to this plant second segment. Yeah, but the guy overreacts and he's like, yeah, they'll take over the world if this is real. It's like, they'll take over the world? There's one that we know about, and it's in my garden. I'm pretty sure we could, like, burn it up. They're going to take over the world? How long does it take for a plant to grow across the whole planet? His reaction is absurd, and I laughed out loud when he said it. Then the dog gets killed by these plants, as I said, and the guy is pretty much convinced that these are killer plants. And he's talking to these experts, and they're agreeing with him. And as soon as these guys are agreeing with him, he should have been like, oh shit, I need to move the fuck out of my house. But no, his wife is trying to implore his daughter to go outside and play where the killer plants are. And the daughter's like, well, it's no fun without Rusty. And she's just like, oh, okay. And I'm like, why is that kid even there? Why is that kid not, like, staying at grandma's, or like the mom and the daughter off in like a hotel somewhere? Why is that guy even still there? I mean, maybe he wants to research him, but why put his family in danger? So he's kind of a dickhead. Maybe he just doesn't believe it yet. I don't know. But yeah, it was crazy. And and maybe the wife doesn't know at all. I mean, I guess that's it. She just thinks the dog keeled over. She knows nothing about the plants. But later, when the plants come to life, she doesn't seem all that shocked. So I don't know. And I love how intelligent the plants get, because they're not alive and they've been in their garden forever, and then all of a sudden they're alive and they're like smart. Like, one cuts the fucking phone lines so they can't call out, and then they're like blocking out the windows, and they're doing all these things. They won't let them leave. They block the doorways, they block the windows, they come in, they kill the one guy, cut the phone lines. Ridiculous. And then fire, of course, is their enemy. And the guy figures, like, I'm going to go for help. Let me use this paper. I'm going to see if it works. As soon as it worked, like, either A, they should have came with him, or B, it worked. So let's all grab some fire too and leave the house, right? I mean, it's pretty small, like, pretty simple. But yeah, and then it just cuts off, and it's like, did he die? Did they come in? What the fuck happened? But he's on the train, and it's like, oh, this is gonna happen, but then it doesn't, because he dies in the train crash. So, but they're fun stories. I know it sounds like I'm ripping the movie apart, but there's a lot of, moments that just don't make a whole bunch of sense. The third act, which is the jokester, the guy I feel like acts like me a lot. He's definitely the most likable and fun character in this film, and I had there was a lot of jokes he was making that I was actually laughing at, because I found them to be genuinely funny. Now, when he is peeping on this voodoo tribe, and he's writing down their music, which it all just seems I'm not a musician, so I'm totally an idiot to this, but it just seemed like drums, and he was writing down the music, and he took it back and he like recomposed it. And I'm not saying that that's not possible. It just didn't sound like anything to me. It just sounded like people just banging on drums for, like, I don't know. It didn't feel like it actually had a musical arrangement to it all that much. And whatever it did, I feel like lots of people would have done that already, and that curse would have hit all of those people. Who knows? Reminds me of the Diablos in Musica in Bloodhook that I did recently. But I love that when he's watching and he's plagiarizing this voodoo curse song. It literally cuts back and forth to him actually 5 times, but it cuts back 4 times in a row, and each time there's a different guy standing behind him, all menacing. It's really silly. It's just like, really, like each time another guy. How many times do you have to do it before we get the point? It was cute, though. It was funny. And their god, which I'm sure is a real god, I've never really looked into it, to be honest, but their god that they're worried about him pissing off is Dumbella, which, if you heard Dumbella, pretty sure any fans out there of Child's Play instantly are like, oh my god, give me the power, I beg of you. Now to weed away Dumbella. When I heard Dumbella, I was like, Charles Lee Ray? Maybe he went there. That's where he went. Or that guy who trained him in Child's Play 1 was there. Yeah, connecting the universes. And I like how they're playing the song and all the wind is blowing and the whole crowd is being like ushered out and the wind's blowing so hard they can barely play, but they just continue to keep playing. Like the show must go on, right? The band won't quit. It's just like, really? And then the guy is all like, oh my god, my club. And he's like, aren't you insured? And the guy's like, yeah, I am insured. Oh, I could get a whole new thing. I could get all new stuff in here because this place is all fucked up. And it's like some wind blew tablecloths off and a couple chairs over, and you're going to claim that in your insurance, and you think you're going to be able to redo your entire place? A couple chairs were knocked over? He acted like the whole place blew up. It was pretty fucking funny. And then the guy just later, one of the guys comes and he just drops dead, on his table. And then the guy just takes the notes and leaves. It's very uneventful. And yet again, it's how was he on the train then? Because this either happened before or it happened after, and he never even made it there anyways. Doesn't matter. Next, we move on to Christopher Lee, the art critic dickhead, who, his character is just one of those things where it's like, he seems to hate almost every art that he encounters. And I deal with a lot of this in being a film fanatic like I am, and dealing with horror movie groups and people who are fans of the genre and whatnot. There's so many people that I meet that seem to just despise 95% of what they watch. And I'm always sitting there like, if you hate them so much, why the fuck do you continue to watch them? I don't understand that. Don't watch them if you don't like them. So his role in this, he's even getting paid to do it. But I don't know, being an art critic, you just look at paintings and you're like, yeah, that's a good painting. All right, pay me money. I don't know, paint a fucking real painting if you're such an expert. But I feel like I'm, calling the kettle black kind of thing, because here I am reviewing movies. But I feel like I'm a pretty fair critic, and I don't hate on shit just to hate on shit. I'm here only to have fun and talk to you guys. I don't do this for money. I just do this for fun. But even if I was being paid, I just wouldn't hate on everything. I wouldn't watch film if I hated all of it. Anyway, moving on. But yeah, he keeps asking, he asks him too, and I like that. He asks him, why do you keep coming to every one of my events if you hate all of my work? And that reminds me of people who continue to keep watching series. They'll watch the 7th Saw movie, and they haven't liked one since 2 or 3, and they're like, can't believe it, man, this sucks. Why is this? It's like, you didn't like the last 4. Why do you think this is? Fuck off. This is silly. Anyway, they're just trying to get off that same. I think they genuinely like to bitch. But then he gets embarrassed because the guy brings out this painting which looks like shit, and he feels the same way I do about abstract art in this, where he's like, now he doesn't on this stupid painting by the ape that looks like a fucking child finger painted it. I saw those finger paintings he brought home, they suck. That must have been one of the finger paintings from Happy Gilmore, because it was terrible. But he goes up to his art and he's like, yeah, this was done without any rhyme or reason. What's this supposed to mean? I am the same way towards abstract art. I always look at it like, wow, so someone threw a bunch of fucking paint. I'm not saying I'm an expert, and I'm not critiquing anyone who does stuff like that. I just, personally, for me, I always look at it okay, I guess. The Jackson Pollocks and stuff. Ugh, ugh, it looks like a painter's rag. Like I feel like you could just take a rag from a painter, he wiped all his brushes on, you could just fucking put it on a wall and be like, art! And I guarantee if you had a name on it, it would sell for like fucking 500 grand. But anyway, moving on. But yeah, this embarrassment of having this ape be the painter of the painting is so great that he ends up running the guy over with his car over his hand. The guy takes his own life. And this is a very stylistic choice. And this brings me back to the blood thing, where the guy puts the gun and you kind of see it out of frame. Like you see only the gun in the hand, and then he like pulls the trigger and the gun falls out and his hand is like, and that's all you see. Just see the gun in the hand and you see a suicide. You don't see the blood. You know I love gore, so I'm not speaking against gore at all. But this was a different time. So they had to be more creative and they had to be more artistic. And there's such a sense of style in it because they weren't able to show a guy just blowing his head off, that it actually is more artsy and it's cool in the film. I really like the choice. And then the hand becomes severed and the hand starts stalking him. And of course, this isn't the first killer hand we've seen or a severed hand that moves around on its own. Off the top of my head, you've got Thing from the Addams Family, and you've got The Hand with Michael Caine, and obviously probably the most famous in the horror community is Ash's hand in Evil Dead 2, and an old film, Beast with the Five Fingers. You got so many severed hand movies. That this is nothing, but this predates almost all of those except for Beast. And then at the end, he is blinded and he can't be an art critic anymore. So that goes against theories that this took place before the train crash and that they just don't remember the train crash because he's not blind when he gets on. So yet again, doesn't make any sense. And the last one. Now the last one is Donald Sutherland's, and it is the vampire one. The doctor defends himself against the vampire by crossing his arms, and it makes a cross and it scares off the vampire. Now at the end we find out that this guy was the vampire as well, which didn't the vampire, I mean, was it trying to attack him because it was trying to also kill the other vampire in town? Like, this town ain't big enough for the two of us. She was coming after him. Like, she couldn't have been coming after him for his blood. She would have sensed that he was a vampire. So that must have been a showdown. It was kind of just like a, battle of the wits, who could outwit the other one, and he obviously won. But the fact that he talks Donald Sutherland into staking his own wife is yet again one of those things where you just have to suspend all disbelief because he just says it. Now, vampires never existed before in his mind. He never believed in them. He says they're ridiculous, and then 2 minutes later he's agreeing to murdering his wife in her sleep because this doctor said that it's true. And then when the cops come and the doctor shows up, he's like, "You told me she was a vampire. Tell them. And it's like, what did you think was going to happen here? Even if the doctor was on your side and he was like, "Yeah, I did say that," they'd be like, "Okay, so both of you idiots are coming with us." Like, did Donald Sutherland's character actually think they'd be like, "Oh, well, this guy said she's a vampire? Oh, well, fuck, I didn't know that. Well, you're free to go." And then the fact that they don't even question the guy, the doctor. And he's like, it's such a corny scene. He like turns to the camera and he's like, "There are two vampires and it's not big enough for both of us." It's a really bad scene. It was a bad choice. But there's so many moments like in there that you're just like, what? Like, they didn't take the body with them. They didn't rope it off for a crime scene. And this is 1965. Maybe that's not how they did things, but it was just like, really? You're just taking the guy away in the car, and then the doctor, who seems to be a party to this in one way or another, like he's a character witness, or he's a witness of some sort that knows about it. Whatever, they're not going to take him in. They're not nothing. They're just like, "Okay, bye." He even says at the end, or he says something like, "You need something?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Okay, bye." Like, he literally says it like that. He's like, "Okay, bye." And he walks off, and it's like, you're in a murder scene. A man just murdered his wife in his sleep thinking she was a fucking vampire. How often do you run into that story? I'm guessing not often, but maybe if vampires do exist in this reality, they hear this story often and they always think it's crazy. I don't know. But as I said, Donald Sutherland gives in, killed his wife like nothing. He's just like, okay, this beautiful young girl that he just married, and he's just like, oh, she's a vampire? All right, well, I guess I can get a new wife. And it doesn't even look like it's anywhere near her heart, by the way, and it doesn't really look like it's all that much in there. So that was pretty sad. But this movie has some great style, some awesome music, and a lot of really cool, recognizable faces that are always a bonus to any horror film. Anyways, 30 fucking minutes, but it's 5 like different movies with a wraparound, so it's almost like talking about 6 different things. So anyway, all right, guys. Adios.